Hi everybody, it's Sarah here. Today is going pretty good. Tomorrow me and my friends are going to go to Comic-Con, so we're very excited. Afterwards, I'm basically going to finish up the last few pieces of my cosplay. If you guys want to look it up, I'm doing Desert Bandit Yamcha from Dragon Ball. So I'm very excited for that. All I have left to do is the little cuffs on his wrist. And then afterwards, I'm going to get ready to go to Hobby Lobby and maybe back to school to do some graduation, get some graduation envelopes and things like that to invite people and photos. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So that's going to be fun. But first and foremost, let's talk about the composer I chose, Toru Takemitsu. Um, so for some of the research that I did, first was born 1930, was in the military service during World War II. That's when he was first introduced to Western music, which had been banned during the in Japan during the war. And afterwards, he was employed at an American military base after the war. I would listen to a ton of Western music on the radio network set up by the U.S. Armed Forces. It was at age 16 where he would take up composition. He would receive some intermittent instruction from a man named Kiyose in 1948, but most of the stuff that he learned was self taught. Um, a fellow composer named Yanagi would introduce him to the type of some music from Messiaen. Um, and it was this guy's work, Messiaen's influence, that was already apparent in Takemitsu's first performed work, Lento Indu Movimenti, Menti, in 1950 for the piano. Um, this is where that we would kind of see some of his earlier style of work. And quoting the document, this work already showed like the characteristic elements in his musical language. So it was modal melodies emerging from a chromatic background, the suspension of regular metron, and an acute sensitivity to register and timbre. So, still, all of that vocabulary just kind of just screamed that modernist movement. Just the way that it sounded, I don't know what it is to me, but I just kind of knew. Um, the premiere that he performed, the movie Bit Piece. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I have no idea why I'm tired. That's weird. But the premiere was received pretty cold, but there were two enthusiastic supporters in the audience, which would be Yuasa and Akiyama, who would remain his friends, and they would all work together in 1951 to with a bunch of other musicians and artists, and founded a group known as the Chiken Kobo for collaborations on mixed media projects. It would be here that Takemitsu would compose some works, and one of them we're gonna hear a little bit of it. Sagirarenai Kyotsoko, first movie in 1952, piano piece, written with irregular rhythms without bare lines, and another one that he would work on, Chamber Concerto, 1955, for 13 wind instruments. Um, it would also be here that he would turn to some electronic music. So some of them being Relief Statique and 1955, and Vocalism AI in 1956. Material is similarly restricted. It's like similar like restricted sounds that he would use in one of them. Example, Mizuno Kyoku in 1960, which was formed exclusively from recorded water sounds. Many of his works in the early 60s are characterized as these textural fragmentations. It was by this time that he would start to get some international attention, and one of his works was recognized by a composer that we learned about. Requiems for Strings in 1957 was heard in 1959 by Stravinsky, who would declare it as a masterpiece and comment on its music's unbroken intensity. Concho received some favorable, or yeah, Concho received some favorable mentions at the 1962 ISCM Festival. Textures for Orchestra gained the first prize in 1965. Um, it was in 1964 where uh, he would be invited to something called the East West Center of Hawaii to give a series of lectures on conjunction with a man named John Cage. Later in the year, he would stage some happenings with Cage and Ichiyanagi in Tokyo. It was Cage's influence that would lean Takemitsu into using more traditional sounding instruments in his work. Uh, Takemitsu, he would comment in 1988 uh, oh, on where am I? He would comment on some of the development of using of transitioning into these traditional instruments, and that he would avoid trying to be Japanese. But it was largely through Cage's influence that he came to see the value of his own tradition, and that from the early 60s onwards, he would use a lot of Japanese traditional instruments. One of the ones that he used, the biwa, in his score for the film Seppuku, the first time that he would really like use it in a piece of media. And from that moment on, he would try to employ it into his music for everything: cinema, radio, TV, all of it. It was in the 1967. He would write a piece for the 125th anniversary for the New York PO, and it was here that he aimed to use his composition in just juxtaposition with the Japanese and Western instruments in a way that would emphasize differences in sonority rather than potential correspondences. Um, in his later works during the 70s, he would gradually turn away from these dense textures of chromatic clusters and sounds and lean more towards greater harmonic timbral differentiations. This would also be where he would stage like his ideas on forms. So that would basically be like one of the examples that the article gave was, oh, he's using this song. It's gonna be like fourth movement, fourth notes, things like that. Most of his work in the 80s and 90s would involve stronger degrees of tonal focuses than his previous 2 decades, but only on occasions. Um, but yeah, it would be that his last few works, orchestral textures shared by DeVos, refinement, luminosity, and remarkable transparency. This would cause him to be regarded at the end of his life as one of the finest orchestrators of the late 20th century. So, lots of work, lots of awards, lots of different styles, still in that era of modernistic styles. One of the ones that we're going to talk about that I mentioned earlier is Saige Rarenai Kyosoku. Uninterrupted Rest 3, a love song. So this is the third movement of that song. It starts off with a quiet, kind of high octave, and it's a lot of echoes. The key notes, the notes are off key and dissonant, lots of long spaces in between. There's like low hums in the background. The notes will vary, especially at the beginning, vary in high to low pitches until they just start to become a high volume and pitch or later on. And the piece also moves in varies a lot in tempo. Lots of fast quick notes for a short time, and then it will stretch out to more longer, slower notes. And the piece, it ends with this gentle like finish, this gentle like, motif of lower octaves towards the end. And especially with its title, what I think it was trying to do is to put like a new perspective on love, since it is a song of love. Probably like a love falling apart and breaking, barely holding on with the gentle moments that it does have, until the ending signifies it's like, oh, this relationship probably ended somehow. But yeah, I think this guy is a very interesting composer. Um, Still, I wasn't a big fan of most of the music that we listened to in this class today, but I would be interested into hearing kind of what some of his visions were in alignment to what we would listen to for things like our discussion board on Monday, things like that. But yeah, I enjoyed some of the pieces that I listened to for him, so I thought those were a very nice, interesting new experience. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and I will see you guys later. Who knows? Maybe we'll come across each other at Comic Con for any of those who are going. But that's all for me, guys.